Shabbat Shalom. This is Rabbi Stephen, Rav Shmuel ben Yehoshua Rashbi, with the sermon for Friday night, July 24th, 2020. So this week's Torah portion starts the book of Devarim or Deuteronomy. This is the last book of the Torah, and we hear Moses giving his discourses to the Israelites, who will now take over and settle the promised land, the land of milk and honey. Moses reviews many of the laws and charges this new generation to observe Torah by remaining faithful to the covenant and teachings of God. Moses himself will not be allowed to enter the promised land after he struck the rock, instead of talking to it to bring forth water. This is Moses' consequence, perhaps the final incident, for not consecrating God's name in front of the congregation of Israel. Moses reviews the last 38 years of wandering in the wilderness, the incidents, especially what gave rise to the generation of the Exodus not being able to enter the land, as a warning for this new generation that had not known slavery. Consider Moses' attitude. He has spent the last 38 years leading and taking care of 2 million people who complained about almost everything. He had to intervene between them and God, who at one point wanted to eliminate them and make Moses the head of a new people on a few different occasions. The stress of having to constantly reassure his people and deal with their rebellions and complaining apparently took a toll on him, as he lost his temper and disobeyed God's command to talk to the rock and bring forth water. He will now not be leading or even joining them in this new promised land. And yet, here he is giving a final farewell and relaying the Torah to this new generation that will need it to live in the new land. As he prepares to go forth and die, he is being gracious and still relating God's message. Instead of being resentful and disgruntled, he has accepted his faith and the consequence of his actions and continues to think of his charges. How many of us would behave so magnanimously in the face of this level of punishment? Moses had done just about everything God asked him to do. He led over 2 million people for 40 years, and where's his reward? Moses accepts his fate and continues to do the right thing. What an example to the rest of us. What do we do when life does not go our way? How do we react when we make plans and life throws us some curves? Moses' behavior and attitude are an example to all of us. Moses had the integrity to accept his fate and still do the right things when things were not going his way. Instead of being sour, he stayed true to his mission. Now, Judaism gives examples about how to behave in the face of adversity. Jacob was in the employ of his uncle-in-law Laban. Jacob spent 20 years working for him and then wanted to leave and take his family to a place where they could live their own lives and start their own family business. Laban went after him, caught up to him, complaining that he left so hurriedly. Jacob admonished them that he had changed their agreement 100 times. How many of us would have had work experiences like Jacob's, in which our employer had made promises to us and did not follow through or impose difficult working conditions? We tend to feel betrayed, upset, disgruntled, and maybe we're thinking that we're not going to work so hard and see just how little work we can do and get away with and still stay employed. We're thinking we want retribution and vindication. Our sages, however, see Jacob's behavior as proper work behavior. Throughout his employ with Laban, Jacob still did the work that he accepted and was expected of him. Even though Laban broke his part of the deal, Jacob still had the integrity to do the work which he agreed to do. Even though our employer may have broken their agreement, it is still our obligation to meet our end of the agreement. Of course, because of his proper behavior, Jacob became very wealthy. Although Moses did not get to enter the promised land, God had him stand on the mountain while he showed him the results of his efforts. Moses got to see a future Israel where Jews would have their own land. Moses was our greatest prophet. Reluctant at first to accept God's charge, Moses rose to the occasion and grew tremendously during the time he served God and his people. He became our greatest and most beneficent leader, thinking only of others, believing in them when they didn't believe in themselves, and with his brother Aaron, helping them to become the best they could be, even in the face of profound disappointment. While it is a lot easier said than done, we would all be well served to look at Moshe Rabbeinu's behavior and emulate God's greatest prophet.